Shall we talk about solid state drives and Ratchet and Clank? Oh, tedious. Like, it shouldn't be tedious. It's quite an interesting topic, but it's been made tedious by the silly console war discourse around it. Sucked the interest out of it, but we'll try. So, most of the controversy, is it controversial? Shouldn't be, but it is apparently. When Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart came out on PlayStation 5, Insomniac said like, oh, this is only possible because of the solid state drive in the PlayStation 5 that lets us load in whole worlds in seconds and do this like rift jumping mechanic that's like super impressive. 2 years later, it's come out on the PC, which is obviously not a PlayStation 5 and does not have the PlayStation 5 solid state drive. It's raised some questions about the validity of that statement 2 years ago, which are fair questions. Like, it is quite an interesting topic, kind of, if you're a nerd. I'm a nerd, so it's an interesting topic to me. Jizzle, you've been playing on the Steam Deck. It's smooth and you're surprised. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank's like signature feature, it being Rift Apart, it being made for PlayStation 5 jibber jabber, is the way that it on the PlayStation leveraged really fast storage to shift worlds in and out. And it doesn't use it very often, but when it does use it, it's quite pretty and quite effective. There's a sequence near the start of the game where dimensions are collapsing and things are going on, and these rifts appear, and Ratchet falls through them. And the time that you fall through a portal, it unloads the world that you're in and loads in a completely new one. And then you fall through these in sequence, so you're loading world after world after world. There's a couple of other areas in the game that do similar tricks. There's a whole level where there's two versions of reality, and if you smack some crystals, then a new version of the world loads in. I can't remember the full pretense of it, but I think it was different points in time it's supposed to be loading. So you're grinding around on rails and you whack these things with your hammer, and the world shifts and changes to the other one. And on the back end on the PlayStation 5, it's clearing out the memory and pulling in a new level essentially from the solid state drive into memory to display it very, very quickly in a few seconds. The trick around it, Insomniac actually said with Ratchet and Clank, they got the specs of the PlayStation 5 and that inspired them to make Rift Apart what it is, rather than the other way around. They didn't have this like rift and dimension shifting idea in mind. They took the technology and they worked in reverse and went, oh, what can we do with that? What's going to be like an interesting mechanic to do around what the PlayStation 5 is good at? And they came up with the Rift Apart and they built a story around it from that point in time, which is fine. At the time when they said that, some of us, more sensible folks, took it at face value for what they were actually saying, which is that basically a little bit of insight into how they're using the PlayStation 5 to do something new that the PlayStation 4 couldn't. And it is entirely condensed down to data transfer. Not very interesting if you start to scratch the surface away. If you're playing a game, it's exciting. There's shit happening on the screen that's exciting. If you strip away the shiny veneer and look at what's happening, the whole story is like the ability to load in a lot of data very quickly and display it, which is cool, right? It works very well. PlayStation 5 is the best machine to play Ratchet and Clank. Xbox doesn't have any game in the level of polish of Ratchet Rift Apart. I'm glad you like it. That's cool. It is like, I think it's a really good game. I genuinely enjoyed Ratchet and Clank a lot. Didn't like 100% it because the side missions were a bit Insomniac style dull, but it's very, very pretty, fun to play. So I'm a fan of it in that sense. But technical level, what it was doing, when Insomniac said that it was using the SSD in this unique way, they weren't lying. When you're playing on the PlayStation 5, that's what happens. You go through one of these rifts, it unloads the entirety of the level and it brings in a new one. There's some hyperbole in what they say, in that mechanically, like their vision for the game, you could achieve that in other ways. You could achieve that without dedicating the entirety of your video memory to a new level. You could either reduce the amount of data that you're loading in, or find other ways to kind of manage it. And that's what they're doing on the PC side of things. So on the PC, if you're playing Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, you've got potentially buttloads of memory available, 1 on your graphics card and 2 on your system. A lot more memory than PlayStation 5 has got in most cases. So if you're a sensible developer making this game and you want it to work on a system that's not the PlayStation 5, that doesn't have that magical SSD, then you can achieve that in 2 ways. You can either reduce the amount of data that you're shifting around, which means like textures and assets getting toned down quite a bit, or you can prefetch it. So the Medium is another example that tried to do a similar thing. If you played the Medium on the Xbox Series consoles, it loads and unloads different realities on the fly as you go. If you play it on the PC, it doesn't do that. It just loads both realities at the same time, fills up the memory that you've got, and achieves the same effects in a different way. Ratchet and Clank on the PC pretty much is the latter. If you've got the specs for it, it achieves the same result in a different way by prefetching a whole load of data and just keeping it ready to go in memory rather than taking it directly from the drive. If you don't have that much memory and you don't have a drive, then it just doesn't work very well. So that's where we are with Ratchet and Clank, but discourse around it, very tiresome. You've got both sets of console fanboys at each other's throats, both trying to claim victories that they don't have. So you've got Xbox fans saying, whoa, oh, Insomniac lied, you can play this game without the SSD. You got PlayStation fans saying, oh, it's true, it was magical SSD. All the Xbox fans were wrong because, I don't know, it stutters a bit or whatever else. And the truth is always somewhere in the middle, and all of the fanboys should all swallow simultaneously the biggest L's they can until they choke, and then the discourse will be better. That's my feeling on Ratchet and Clank. What do we all think?